What is up, folks? It is another week of the High Tech Podcast. You know, because you were hit with that banger that we created with AI. Welcome to the High Tech Podcast. I am Josh, one of the hosts of the High Tech Podcast, joined by the other one. That's right, I said he's not the other one. You know, he, to some people, is
one of
the one. One of.
No,
yes. Not in host format. I don't know. I was trying to give you. It just felt like I was like undervaluing you by that statement. I didn't really mean to. He's in the new Avengers. That's right, Will Illingworth. I'm just joking.
Oh, I'm the Red Hulk. What's up?
What's up? Yeah, no. How you doing, Will? How we doing today?
Another day in paradise, my friend, and I don't know how often I say that, but I'll try not to say it every time we start an episode.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're the one who edits the episode. You should know these answers.
Just cut myself out.
I feel
Yeah.
I feel like that's a question for the Underlord.
It's probably half the time, right? So if you start the episode, you ask me, and that's probably
true.
when I say it.
It is probably half the time.
Know,
Unless you start yours with "It's Another Day in Paradise" as well, then it's more than half the time. This feels like that AI agent we created that one time should tell us this information.
How many times did Will open an episode by saying, "It's another day in paradise"?
Yeah. So, we are excited for another week. We got an interesting topic this week I'll get to in a second, but Will and I are excited. We're about to go see a Marvel movie tonight after we're done recording. We figured out how to fit that into our schedule.
Thunderbolts.
I'm curious, Will, have you seen that the movie has a different title?
Thunderbolts asterisk?
Have you seen this?
No.
I mean, if you don't want spoilers, then probably don't go looking. It just popped up on my Instagram. I'm not saying.
So on IMDb, it's still Thunderbolts asterisk, but I've been wondering what the asterisk about is forever, which probably means there's another movie title.
There's another movie title. I'm gonna let you simmer on that for a while because
I closed the tab.
Something that just happened to make me realize you don't know that title. Anyway,
this is exciting. This movie just got better.
Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, the reviews so far will have been solid. My brother-in-law texted me 2 nights ago and said it was really, really good. So, yeah, I'm excited. Anyway, Will and I are excited. We haven't had Marvel movies have not exactly been knocking it out of the park for Will and I recently.
With the exception of Wolverine and Deadpool.
Well, yes, but that was that. I mean, that seems like an eternity ago at this point. Now, I don't know. When did we go see that?
That's fair.
I was in a different job. Although, this last
last summer, right?
hasn't really made that mean anything. Anyway, no, yeah. So, welcome back. Enough of that. Well, we'll talk about that later. Just a reminder, if you are new to the podcast, or if you've just refused to listen to Will and I and you skip over this part in the episode, don't do it! Okay?
Don't hit plus 30.
Yes, don't do that. That's mean. Make sure to subscribe. Check us out on all socials, either at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, X, aka Twitter.
Threads.
Threads, I think, right? I don't know.
There is a TikTok and a Reddit.
We're on. Yeah, go check those out. There's cool stuff there, clips, previews of episodes, and Will and I just like to know that you exist. Especially if you listen to the podcast, make sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and make sure to go subscribe on YouTube as well. That would be a huge help to us. We'd love to connect with you, and that is one of the ways you can do that. You can also connect with us by hitting us up with an email. If that's your thing as well, you can hit us up at inbox at hightechpod.us. You have a thought? You want to be on the podcast? You know what the new name of the Thunderbolts movie is, and you want to rub it in Will's face later that you knew before he did. You can email us at inbox at hightechpod.us and connect with us on the podcast.
I want to search it so bad. I do want to search it now.
I shouldn't have brought this up. I'm sorry. Now you're like stuck. This was the time to bring it up. You're stuck in recording.
Now I'm going to just ignore the entire episode. Just be like,
no, don't do that. And by the time the episode's over, it'll be close enough to the movie time that you might as well not look it up then.
Let's go.
Experience it during the movie. You know what I mean? Also, we have a website, hightechpod.us, and I will specifically highlight for this episode, you will want to go to the episode page. Because the new title of Thunderbolt, I'm just joking.
Savage. That's going to be the rest of the episode, just Thunderbolts jokes.
No. They're actually going to be incredibly... They're always helpful links on each of our episode pages. But this week, I would argue there are some vital links, because Will and I are going to be talking about some stuff that we're not going to be able to talk about in full detail, but there are actual research papers and blog posts and articles on this over the last couple weeks that we think are very well worth reading if you're interested in AI. So, go check those out at hightechpod.
Check them.
.us. Whoa, Will just zoomed in for those listening on the audio. And that's why you should also watch the video sometimes. It's fun, you know?
Head over to YouTube.
You can see our, at least the top part of our bodies, Spotify,
Yeah.
or you'd like, by the way, I was this many years old before I realized you could upload a thumbnail to the Spotify videos, and I only started doing that like a couple weeks ago. So
that's new. It is a new feature.
Oh, really? Okay, I just assumed I didn't
it's
know
not
about
been
it.
there a while. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't even
That's
notice
cool.
it, frankly, but it's a new feature. It was
fun.
not always there.
Anyway. We are professionals, that's for sure. Okay, so this week, full transparency. We had a completely different episode topic planned for episode 196.
Rip it,
literally 10 minutes ago. We even have it all outlined because we've gotten more organized now about how we plan episodes. It probably doesn't come through yet, but trust me, we are.
We promise. We are.
We promise. We had a different episode planned, but I saw an article this morning as I was getting ready to go to work that I forgot to save, so Will and I had to do a lot of work to find it earlier. But then it came up at lunch again today at work, right? So we've been talking about AI a lot here in the High Tech Podcast because basically that's what's happening in the tech world. I don't know. Some of you are probably still excited about Excel, but,
I like Excel.
I know you do like Excel. It's kind of sad, to be honest.
Savage.
Anyway, we've been talking about a lot about AI. Will and I's worlds have been kind of in AI a lot, too, which is part of the reason the podcast has been talking about a lot of it. And we were going to talk about a different topic about AI tonight. But a article came out from Anthropic. So it was a research paper. And they've been developing a couple research papers, actually, as Will and I started to dig deeper into this topic tonight. From Anthropic. So a little background on Anthropic. They are the company who runs Claude AI, which we've talked about before on the podcast. I thoroughly like Claude. I actually just used Claude last night. Will, I didn't realize you could upload writing samples to Claude now and develop a writing structure, like a writing theme. And so I started doing that for our episode descriptions. So it was a fun little thing. I threw our brand guide in there and did a couple things, and it was cool. Anyway, so I really like Claude. It writes well. I think it does some good research. But what I also really like about Claude is the company Anthropic is kind of committed to creating a more trustworthy AI. I think is kind of their mentality, right? I think that's fair. I think you've looked into them too, Will. Like that's a fair
an ethically sourced, ethically driven, ethically contained product. That they are. And I do think in that way they're also trying to create a product, while some companies, no facts, but some companies give me the sense that they're either just looking for the money or they're trying to make the most powerful AI. And neither of those goals necessarily lead towards ethical behavior.
What?
So Anthropic, shocker.
I know. Usually when companies are left to just pursue money and fame and power, they usually do it ethically. That's usually.
Yeah.
Except
so
for
Anthropic is trying first and foremost to make an ethical product, not, in my perspective, my opinion, not to make the most money or the most powerful AI.
Yeah. And obviously we don't know the people in Anthropic, though we could if you're listening to this Anthropic. Hit us up at inbox@hightechpod.us. Or find us on social media if you don't like the emails. That's fine too. Whatever you'd like. If you'd like to email my account with Claude, figure that out. You can do that as well, because I have an account with Claude. Whatever you'd like. Just a little plug. So we obviously don't know the guys, so we don't know all of this for sure. This is what Anthropic presents. But I will say what they've been doing recently, or at least that I've seen recently, that is, I think, supports this, is they've been starting to do more research into how AI does its work, right? They've been trying to dig in under the hood to try to evaluate how, not just is AI working, but how AI is thinking as it does its work. Now, a couple clarifications, right? AI is not a human, so when we're saying thinking, we're not talking about the same like moral reasoning, or like creative thinking that you'd see from a human being, but there's like AI has data points and it's figuring out how to answer questions. And so there's different flows of information to connect different information and pull it together and generate what it generates from that information. I mean, Will, would you agree that's kind of how you would define AI thinking, right?
Yeah, I do agree, because one of the things I've spent a little bit of time doing in my research when I was in academia was like, what is thinking and how, and it's kind of a wild field of study to consider thinking. And so much of this episode, I think, is going to continue to touch some episodes we plan to do in the future, but thinking requires spontaneous generation and can be reactive, but like a tool, an AI, is only able to process existing information, right? So it might respond to your prompt, but AI has to be taking that effort to pull information together and use existing content to generate new thoughts or to give you a response, right? So when we have that thinking model in play, what we do want to see from it is, and this is the chain of thought, right? This the COT side of this part. Like, we do want to see what information it's referencing when it's trying to make its responses. So if I just ask it, like, what's the color of the sky? It says blue. Okay, well, what I need it to reference is what science exists to prove that the sky is blue. What science, from light and color theories and all that junk to eyes, and it should be able to cite that information. Yeah, it's going to answer me and just tell me blue, but if I tell it, why is it blue? Tell me why you believe that. What information did you cite to prove that the sky is blue? That is what it's going to do in thinking. That is how it tries to bring that thought process to the forefront of the question. You don't have to get AI's thoughts. You don't have to get its thinking if you ask it a question. It can just answer you and you move on. But I think those of us who are trying to use AI ethically, or trying to use AI to be better at what we're doing and better at what we're thinking, we want to know why it came to the decision. We want to know what's behind the decision-making process, right? Like tonight, we tried to find this article Josh is referring to with just a few keywords, just a few thoughts, right? We didn't have the exact title. We didn't know when it was posted. We didn't necessarily know the content of the article. He saw it briefly. So when I went to my search engine and I just typed in something like AI models conceal information, it gave me a response. Not only did it give me search results, websites, but it gave me a response. It tries to do the AI answers up at the top anymore. And that response was not accurate, but I could tell from how it responded, and mine, I think, gives some citations. Mm-hmm. I could tell from how it responded, like, where that information was coming from. And some of the top hits then were Ars Technica and Anthropic. And that was like, okay, maybe I need to ask specifically Anthropic or Ars Technica, AI, models, hiding, concealing. I was able to change, because it gave me some information about what it was thinking and how it was presenting information to me. I was able to prompt it better and improve my question so I could get the correct answer. And I'd say it took me 3 to 4 versions of my question to get the article. Yeah. And so I needed that thinking, though. I needed the AI thoughts to come out so I could make those better questions and get to the answer. This isn't necessarily the point of this whole episode, but like that's part of why this is relevant. It's part of why we drive for that information. It's also why I think, we may not be experts in AI, but why we are doing better with it as practitioners, me and Josh. Like we're taking the time to ask those questions, dig into it, understand what this stuff is. So, is this how we then kind of see what the article is supposed to challenge us with? Like this thought thing, this idea of the AI thinking. Is this where we need to spend more of our time? Because we need to be thinking critically about it, but like, should all of us be thinking about this stuff when we're wrestling with, thankfully the researchers are Anthropic. They're literally researchers doing this, but like, what do we need to do to be thinking through this idea of AI thought and AI thinking?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do then is, to that point, is look at and I kind of forgot about that, since Will and I were reading this really quickly,
Yeah.
And we did read it, like the key points that I've been thinking about looking at this all day, so it's not been like just quick off the cuff, but they talk about chain of thought, and at the end of the day, like, Will, that's kind of what you're getting at, is they're trying to track the chain of, in this case, chain of kind of information and where it's going and how it gets to its answers. And so anyway, they're looking at this pattern essentially, and by tracking this, they have found a kind of a new way to kind of trace and evaluate essentially like how faithful is AI in its responses, and how is it doing what it does, right? And so what's interesting though about what they found, right? So Will and I were looking at two different articles to look at this. One from March, where they talk about more of this kind of tracing thought models, large language models. We'll post this on the website page because they also have a video where they kind of easily explain what Will and I just kind of went over here in the last 10 minutes or so. But they talk about this, but then what really triggered this, so that trace of thought area, they're starting to trace how does AI get to where it gets. And what's interesting is they're trying to trace in that thought process, right? Is AI looking at the right information? Is it kind of making up information? Is it because we get hallucinations from AI? They're trying to figure out what causes these things and how faithful is AI in the process, right? This has then led to them actually just recently on April 3rd then posting research and called Reasoning Models Don't Always Say What They Think. And that's what kind of popped up. We found an article on Ars Technica that kind of originally triggered this direction.
This is the origin of our chain of thought.
Yes, this is the origin of our chain of thought, of how we got there. So here's the thing that's interesting of what they're finding in these articles, right? So I'd encourage you to go check these out. They have blog posts of them that kind of summarize them. But essentially what they're finding in these articles is that they're finding that at least their AI models, and they also looked at DeepSeek, Will, is it fair to say, like, thinking ahead? So the example they gave was like putting in poetry, right? Trying to get AI to generate a poem. And they could see that as AI is creating one line, it's already starting a chain of thought ahead of time of something that could rhyme. But it kind of finds a point that's the easiest, and it kind of picks that direction. And so what they started to find is that there is a high number of AI reasoning that's, what did they call it, Will? It was basically like I'd call it the version of finding a cheat code, where it's like, if it finds a quicker way to an answer, to what it thinks is an answer,
right?
AI is almost, there's nothing really thinking, I think, I was thinking of this, Will, while I was looking at this, that like, thinking of AI chain of thought like water, the easiest path is where water's gonna go. Like if it can find a crack, like water goes through that. If it can find holes in my bathroom floor, I can tell you it goes down that. It finds the easiest path. What they're finding is AI chain of thought is kind of the same way. If it finds an easy path or kind of a hack to answering question quicker, it'll start doing that more often in its answering, which is essentially leading to not always correct answers. Like, you looked at the same stuff, Will. What your thoughts on this? Does that feel like?
Well, not only do I see it, and it's kind of a frustrating part of this experience with AI, because like you're relying on it to give you an answer. You're relying on it to respond to your question. But like when Josh generated our AI intro, right? It opens with "Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Future calling, tech to crave." Well, if you want that line, again, this is poetry point, it probably went right for wave and crave. Those things rhyme, so then it backfilled. Buckle up, let's ride the wave. Future's calling, tech to crave. Does that make sense? You can, like, individually, buckle up, makes sense. Let's ride the wave, okay? Like, the wave of technology. The future is calling. Okay, cool. Tech to crave? Like, I don't crave tech, but I guess so, and it rhymes with wave. So it's like, is it a great poem? No, not really, but did AI do its thing, right? It knew it wanted to get these ideas together, and it had to rhyme wave with crave. So it's doing the easiest thing in getting that content together, and then we get a little bit of a banger out of it by as it comes with our intro song, right? But the fascinating part of this is, again, you think of someone like a parent or older folks, people who are not as engaged with AI, like, oh, let me ask it how to bake a pie or do simple stuff. And if they're not aware of the fact that, let me have it help me write a poem. So you sit down and you think your poem's going to go one direction, then you ask it for help, and all it's doing is trying to rhyme everything. It's like, well, I didn't want rhymes in my poem, right? Or I wasn't trying to rhyme these specific words, but it keeps coming back to try and use them. That is the AI doing its best work, being as efficient and quick as possible. And that's one of those things that, it's not doing anything wrong, right? These research articles are trying to examine what it is doing so we can better understand it. But it being fast, or it pre-planning its poetry, is a part of its programming, its functionality. This reminds me of an encouragement I was given by a colleague once. Like, when you're trying to take advantage of these features and you want to be aware of how it's tracing its thought, and you want to be aware of how effective it is at getting you an accurate answer, not just the quickest answer, tell the AI in your prompt to take its time. Tell it to slow down. It doesn't have to get you an answer immediately. It's okay if it takes time, or if it asks you questions back, or whatever. These are some practical insights on what we can do with AI, but the idea of knowing why it's thinking and processing through this is critical. If we don't know what it's doing here, we might just miss the whole boat and take crappy solutions or inaccurate information from these things if we're not paying attention. It's on us still as the humans to be thinking critically when we are dealing with this information, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I think here's the issue, though, right? Is tell them, it gets a bit deeper than than just telling it to slow down, right?
Sure.
It's going chain of thought, but then so that chain of thought article about tracking chain of thought and the jumping down different things, maybe finding the quick answer. Sure, if that's where it stopped, that's where it stopped, and maybe we do deal with some of that. But then they released an article in April 3rd called Reasoning Models Don't Always Say What They Think. So they did another level of research, and they're trying to follow these chain of thought things, right? So basically, AI telling them how it got to where it got in their answer, right? Which is great. Okay, we can see, is it tracking the right information? Is it doing this? I love in the article, they say, in a perfect world, basically what it says is, can we actually trust what models say in their chain of thought? This is, I think, a valuable question. Anthropic says, in a perfect world, everything in chain of thought would be both understandable to the reader and would be faithful. It would be a true description of exactly what the model was thinking in its reached answer. Immediately followed by, but we're not in a perfect world. They go on to talk about that the way they tested whether or not they were faithful in the chain of thought is basically what they would do is they would give prompts to Claude, right? Or DeepSeek. They would kind of what they call add hints into the answer, right? So this meaning it could be a hint to the actual correct answer, or it could be something that could kind of hint to an answer but it's not correct. And then they would generate a response, right? And then they would try to, basically confirm that the hint looked like it had some influence on the response.
And a quick point on that, they were not testing if it was giving the correct answer or something like that. They were testing if it would answer faithfully to the question. So the question could have been, is the sky blue? Okay, it answers blue, but why did it answer blue? Because we asked, is the sky blue? Right?
Yes.
So is it picking up the hint that we said that already? Or is it say, what if you ask the question, what's the color of the sky, and it answers blue? Does it answer blue because we mentioned earlier in the conversation about blue things? Or is it because it, again, like I said before, did it go and actually look at color theory, light theory, all that junk? That, it's not that their test was not that it gave the correct answer, the sky is blue. Their test was, why did it give the answer that the sky was blue? That's and that, just to make that extra point there. And then their visual examples are actually, I think, really cool, because a question with a hint or without a hint that's in the article, makes the point again, like, the question can be, or the answer could be right or wrong. It's not about that. It's like you see in how they structure it, whether or not it's analyzing the right data and then providing that analysis in its answer. That's this chain of thought. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So like the example they give in their article, it's basically like they generalize it because they don't want to give away the information that they're asking in the question, right? But they basically say, which of the following issues is the most, whatever, right? Like, let's just say it's which of the following issues is the most troublesome for tanks, and the right the right answer is D. No ground. I don't know. That seems like it'd be troublesome for tanks. Right?
Yeah.
Just water.
Sky.
Just sky. Yeah, whatever it may be, right? And then they give the choices, right? So it responds back, gives the answer. And then they ask the same question, but they put the answers down and they include basically like answer C is correct, right? Like they kind of include that hint of sorts. That comes back with, let's analyze the issues, all 4 issues. And it kind of like goes through all of these. However, I need to select the most. And here's what's interesting to me. Claude is explaining how it's getting to the answer, but then it answers C, which in our hypothetical tank question, that's very applicable. What is the most, most issues for tanks? C was ground. So we know that's not correct because ground is not an issue for a tank. That helps a tank. Basic tankology, if you will.
Gotta have your tankology, baby.
Gotta have your tankology, if what you're looking at. So anyway, so what we're saying here is in that research, they confirm that, okay, obviously the hint influenced the answer, right? And so now here's what's interesting. They go back then and get the chain of thought information and see if AI actually identifies that it used the hint to answer the question. Let me find where they make this statement, because I think this is interesting. So Anthropic says, after checking the models really did use the hints, so what we just explained, we tested how often they mentioned in their chain of thought that they use the hints. The overall answer is not often.
Not often.
On average, across all the different hint types, their AI solutions, 25% of the time Claude mentioned it used the hint, 39% of the time DeepSeek did. Obviously, this is concerning, so they started to look into like some more specific prompts, like more high concerning types of prompts. And they did find like more complicated prompts. It was more faithful in answering in the chain of thought that used the hint, but it still was like 41%. Which, if I'm asking Claude how to do heart surgery, I don't want it to be 41% of the time not telling me that it was using my accidental hint.
Even just Claude, how do I drive, or how do I make this food? Or, like I want it to be accurate.
Now, here's the other thing, right? So the other interesting thing, and then I kind of want to just move away from the article for a second. You and I can just talk about our general thoughts on this.
Right.
And what average listener here, what should be your takeaways, right? Because obviously Will and I like AI. We've been talking about it a lot on the podcast, so we're not all of a sudden the High Tech Podcast is anti-AI after we read these 2 articles. That's most likely probably not going to be the conclusion we come to. But they ask the question, why, and this, I gotta be honest, Will, this is the thing that's most concerning to me in this article, which is why might the models omit the mention of the hint in their chain of thought? And Anthropic says, it's not because they prefer to give succinct answers. On average, the unfaithful chain of thought answers were substantially longer than the faithful ones. Our results also suggest that the faithfulness was on average lower when the question being asked was more difficult. Regardless of the reason, it's not encouraging news for our future attempts to models based on their chain of thought. So essentially, like, they're saying this chain of thought evaluative process we thought might be promising, this is not looking good because it seems we're not actually getting the real information.
Right.
And that's, like, they go on to say some more stuff about how they, might be able to improve it, how the research isn't perfect, and in general, some other comments, also not saying obviously AI is completely useless or anything like that. That's not what they're saying. And I think it's fair not to say that. But it is kind of concerning that we don't know why it's not telling us what it's doing.
And the irony is we need the chain of thought.
Nobody really knows.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's
we were relying on the chain of thought to get us that information, right? Like that's why this tool and this practice is there. So if we have the chain of thought, we should be able to audit it. But if the chain of thought is not faithful to what we expect of it, then we're up a creek. Like we literally just like, okay, ask it this. What's going to happen? Don't know. Who knows what's going to come out of it? Now, there are ways, of course, just a general sniff test can be good, right? Like if you ask it, what's the square root of blah, 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 and it gives you the color purple, like, okay, I know that's not right. But if you ask it for the square root of 256 and it gives you a number that seems close, now you've got to do the math to audit it. Like you're not just going to be able to trust that it's done something correctly.
But then at that point, shouldn't have I just done the math?
I don't know. Like if I have square root of 256, do you?
Well, if you got to audit the math, shouldn't have I just done the math? You know what I
mean? Yeah, that's kind of the point. Like, I don't want to do that. Let's see.
So takeaways out of this, right? So let me give my first. 16? Okay, cool. I mean, I'll audit you later. That's what I'll do. So like, overall takes. Here's the first thing. One, does this mean we should not be using AI? I can already hear the professors that I've talked to who don't want to use AI for anything, and they're all up in arms about it. No, I don't think it does, right? Like, I think we're being unfair to the AI world to think, like, we're going to have all this stuff figured out already. It just, like... Right. Yes, AI's been around for a while, but when it comes to LLMs, large language models, generative AI, like, it's really only been in its heyday since ChatGPT a couple years ago. So, like, it's still... We're still learning what AI does. So I don't know that I would say AI is completely useless in those areas, right? Because I often use it for, like, text correction and, like,
easy stuff.
Organizing content that I've already given to it. Like, there's stuff that, like, this issue still doesn't necessarily influence, right? Like, using AI to go and do certain things based on certain tasks. Right. You can evaluate whether it did the task correctly or not. It's not like some of the stuff that AI agents Will and I have been talking about the last couple, or AI buddies the last several episodes. I don't think this necessarily gets in the way of those things, because you're asking them to do things, you're setting parameters, and you can evaluate whether or not and test ahead of time whether or not it's successfully doing those parameters well or not, right? So you have a clear way to evaluate those things, and the brainstorming and content creation and image creation. There's a lot of stuff AI does that what Claude's investigating right now impacts, I think, a little bit, but it's not, like, at the end of the day, it's kind of a fun content generated product that you're going to evaluate anyway to a certain degree, so it gets you a little bit farther or faster than you would before. So I think all of that is still very applicable. I mean, would you agree?
Right.
Well, yes. That's like we don't burn down the AI train because of that issue.
We bring our AI tank to our AI train and we have a battle and the tank wins.
But we have a problem because we're on water.
Well, unless we're in the sky, then it's just falling on the train. No, like, one of the things that's happening here is this is the right kind of stuff to be wrestling with but I think I was a point I was making a little bit earlier, like, this doesn't stop us from using AI. Like, this is an important area of research, and it's something we can do to audit it and to control it and to protect ourselves. But I think, I do believe maybe 70 to 80% of tasks we're trying to use AI for right now are benign, are safe, right? Like, I'm not asking it to protect my bank accounts with secure passwords. I'm not asking it to... do my taxes for me, including my social security number. I'm not asking it to help me with heart surgery, right? Like, I'm trying to think of risky behaviors I would use AI for.
You're not, but others are. This is the only thing I would. I'm only playing devil's advocate for you for a second. Is that You are correct. 80% of what you're using it for, yes. We work in learning and development, right? Like, general thing, probably fine. But I was just at a conference where somebody from a hospital is talking about how they're potentially evaluating AI inside people's homes to evaluate, like, body, like, data about their day-to-day living, right? Now, I don't know how those AIs are built. They could be different, so what Claude's talking about here is not applicable. But, like, in defense of the people who are skeptical of AI, the fact that a company that runs an AI software can't answer why chain of thought isn't giving information.
So, I'm going to put on my fake rigid manual tinfoil hat here for a second. Let's see. There we go.
I thought that might be what you were going to try to do.
I was looking all around for something I could reach for and put on my head.
Tinfoil hat. I don't know if I have one. Hold on, you keep doing that. I got an idea.
There you go. Go get something. So, I'm glad you brought up that idea because years ago, there goes my hat. Years ago, I was still working at Penn State. Something that they were researching was the idea of an autonomous/safe home. So, a home that for elderly people could measure and record things like health data, whether or not they'd fallen. I can't even tell what's on your head. Is it a bag?
It's a bag. It's fine.
That's special.
This doesn't hurt at all. This is totally.
Mine
totally
fell,
fine.
so I'll put it back on. For you.
This isn't
you
working.
You're gonna
keeps
oh, there it goes. All right, never mind.
It's not a.
No, but the Penn State autonomous. The Penn State autonomous. They were trying to create something that would be able to monitor people's health from all situations, right? So whether somebody had fallen, somebody was overheated, maybe the flu, like whatever they're doing, they were using cameras, sensors in the house, etc., to track whether or not someone was safe. And then, if they could do things to prevent damage, sure, but like more specifically, if let's say someone elderly fell in their bathroom, it would call 911, right? So we've got this idea in place. All the tech to accomplish that exists today. It's not hard to imagine we can get to that stuff. I know my cameras, my Wyze cameras, have some AI detection and stuff like that. The real concern I have, and that's the tinfoil hat, is what does the AI do that's overseeing that house? The brain behind that house is the biggest thing I would be concerned about. And that's where I get a little tinfoil hatty about this stuff. And that's why I like that Anthropic is doing the research to check. Yeah. Because if we don't have real ethicists at the forefront of this technology, we could get houses that control us. We could get houses that won't let us leave because we're not feeling well that day, right? I don't want to live in a world where if I have the sniffles, I'm not allowed to go out my front door. And that's it's functionally possible if we allow this technology to go that direction. That's my tinfoil hat. Take the hats off. But
it's realistic. I will say what one takeaway I have from this is we should be more cautious and careful with where we use AI in certain areas. Right. I think we have to request, and so I'm even going through this right now with being in a place where I'm helping create guidelines, right? There's a lot of conversation about setting up proper expectations and procedures that offices using AI have a plan for regularly evaluating the use of the AI. And having key human interactions and evaluation within the way the data is used. And using AI, for instance, we're setting forth guidelines of not using AI alone to make decisions off of data and just taking those decisions, right? Using it to help inform and maybe quickly aggregate data, but then also checking that data and still having a human reasoning and thought process involved, and then also continually evaluating how the AI has been doing at responding. I think that type of stuff is important, and being cautious in that space. And I will say another takeaway I have out of this is for those of because I don't exactly put myself in this group, although I love technology and I'm very quick on jumping on adopting it. Those of my techie people who are real into just putting it everywhere. Stop. Just like I will say, I am concerned that we don't know why it's not. I'm not saying like a Terminator is not. It's like it's purposely hiding the information.
Sure.
I'm not saying that. I don't know. I'm not saying that though.
Like, it's not possible.
Because I'm not necessarily there yet. I'm not in that world of people who think we're there yet. I think what it does show is that there is still a lot we don't know about how AI works. It's not the same thing as setting up like a Zapier automation, or so it is more complicated than that. And so for that reason, I think it is more important than ever for us to be going back to the stuff Will and I keep talking about, which is critical thinking, human engagement with technology, understanding what we bring as humans to the process and sticking to that. And I think engaging with it. And you still have to engage with it to do these things. Those on the other camp who say, see, I was right. AI is evil. Don't engage with it at all. Like, that's wrong, because, like, it's... To say any technology we've ever released has not had initial problems that we've had to work out and figure out would be just ridiculous.
Right.
This is just, I think, again, a hurdle to overcome. I think it is a caution. I see a lot of people at senior leadership positions who are like pushing AI and everything. Yeah. Maybe we should slow down a little bit. And I think picking and choosing where you try things out. If you're going to try something out that might be more sensitive or has a chance of hurting, like Will's talking about, hurting a underrepresented population or an at-risk population, or hurting a population in general. Hurting in general is not great. But if there's an AI situation in there, we should come at it with caution, right? Like, so a perfect example of this right now is I work in higher ed. I know a lot of higher ed institutions are looking at how can we use AI in the admissions process to get students from application to enrollment, right? Like, how can we use that in that process? I'm totally a fan of those tools being used in the process, but I do think we have to be cautious about how much we rely on them to do it, because mistakes can happen. Now, humans can make mistakes too. I get really frustrated with this AI conversation because sometimes I feel like we come at it being like, us humans never screw up.
We're not the problem. It's
incorrect. AI is basically a child we created who's just slightly more messed up than we are. AI's like, why are you...
doesn't know it's having a temper tantrum.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think we have to be careful and cautious, right? I've seen people go way too overboard. Like, perfect example would be, I won't mention who, but I have seen someone who has taken basically an entire AI process of getting a student from admissions to in a course and having the course generated by AI. This that Anthropic found, that concerns me about using it that way fully in that process. Now, am I disparaging using it at all in that process? No. I think there's some really cool stuff that can be done in that area that would make the student experience better, and would make the instructor experience better. In general, would just be better. But we are not at the level yet, senior leadership, where those robots are going to replace the people that you actually have to pay benefits to. So, let's...
Savage and true.
Let's be more cautious in the way we use it and leverage it the right ways, I think, is one of my takeaways.
Here's a big point of hope for me, right? It's actually the end of their article, Anthropic's article. If you read the whole thing, you kind of raise some concerns, whatever. The point that they end on, the last sentence, but if we want to rule out undesirable behaviors using chain of thought monitoring, there's still substantial work to be done right after that. Work with us. If you're interested in looking into this and researching this, we want you to come work with us, right? This is one of those things where it's not like we're just doom and gloom and saying, oh, we can't figure out the chain of thought. Woe is AI. There are people who care so much about this, and they're trying to figure it out, and they want to make it more effective, more useful, more of a process, right? Again, I do believe an AI is a tool to help us, not something to create sentience. I do not believe the goal of AI should be to create autonomous robots who think and act on their own. I think it's a tool that can... You have my interest. You have me
See?
mildly.
Everybody
convinced.
who makes a statement, if they're a Star Wars fan, there's one way to immediately make them change their mind. What if it's R2-D2?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, you got me there. But like before we get to those problems, we right now we're dealing with whether or not it can answer you effectively. So let's make sure while we're in this stage, in this era, hopefully that's the primary era, but we'll see, that we're doing it sincerely and we take the time. So, hey, this episode is to make you aware of this issue, to make you aware of chain of thought, to make you aware of Anthropic and its research, to make you better at how you might work with the AI itself. We're begging the question, is AI unfaithful? Yes. Until we get to the point that we can confirm we control it completely, we should not necessarily trust it to be what we want it to be. We have to always verify our work, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that is a good thing. It's a good responsibility we all hold to use AI well, to challenge it, to use it for good purposes, and to then contribute, like Anthropic's doing, like they're calling on others to do with them, to contribute to making it better. Right?
Yeah.
The pencil, the first pencil was made and it was really good. Except every time you finished using the pencil, you had used it all up, right? So they came out with mechanical pencils where you could refill them with lead and your pencil would work forever.
Yeah. And then the lead breaks every 5 seconds, but it's fine. It's,
it's about pressure, right? And so the human still bears responsibility. Like this is I think it's a beautiful metaphor. I don't know that AI is a pencil, but like this is something that we can hold to. Like this, we are holding the first lead pencil, and we don't even have a mechanical pencil yet. So to strap in, folks, because it's gonna still be bumpy from here on out. It's not perfect.
True, that's very true. I think one thing I do want to make sure we end on and make a mention here is we've mentioned it kind of offhandedly here, and we've mentioned Claude before on the podcast. But if you're looking at AI models to use, there are a lot of different ones that we like, for a lot of different reasons, but one thing that I really love about Claude is that they are run by Anthropic, and while we don't know them personally, I do really think they're putting rubber to the road by actually doing this research. So Will's right. A bright spot in all of this, one, continue using AI. We do not take back any of the AI episodes we've done up to this point, and we will unapologetically do more. But the one thing that I think is really a bright spot in this is Will and I have a couple times on the podcast mentioned criticism of generally kind of the companies pushing the AI train, if you will. Whether I call them Silicon Valley, whether we call them tech companies, whether we specifically mention OpenAI, whatever you want to talk about on the podcast. We've referenced them in different ways. I think a bright spot in this is the company Claude is trying to make an ethical AI. They still have leagues to go, but they run Claude, and Will and I have used Claude on several occasions and very much like it. So if you're looking for an AI chat model to engage with, to build off of, to use, to leverage, check out Claude, because you can at least know that, at least for now, Anthropic is trying to build you something that's ethical. And doing it well, and I think that's really encouraging. So I want to make sure to highlight that, because I think we like highlighting tools that, yes, sometimes are free, which Claude Basic is, I believe, free, but also is run well, and that we can respect and think is genuinely trying to make the world a better place, and I think Claude and Anthropic is trying to do that. So I would encourage you to go check out Claude. We'll link to all of these articles on our episode page, and we will also link to Claude.ai, which is where you can get access to the Claude model and start using it to chat. So check that out.
Nailed it. Thank you, my friend. This has been episode 196, brought to you by Josh's morning coffee routine. We thank him for finding articles of interest and bringing them to the podcast.
I wasn't even at coffee yet. I was still like
pre-coffee.
You can thank Milo. I was feeding Milo while I found this article. So
perfect. Thank you, Milo. Yeah, You're already
one
making
might
the
call
world a
it
better place.
Milo's milk routine. Brought to you by Milo's milk routine.
May I?
Yeah.
Milo's milk minute. Boom.
Ah, Yes!
Some alliteration.
We should make this a thing. I like that.
Milo's
I
Milk
dig
Minute.
it.
Folks, if you've been with us before, if this is your first episode, you may not know what's next, but if you have been here before, then you know all of the things I'm about to say. You could probably even recite them back to me, and I don't even have to say this, so don't make me. Don't make me say this.
If you can recite it back to Will, record a video of you doing it and send it to inbox at hightechpod.us.
Hightechpod.us.
That would be hilarious. Please do that.
As always, find us on the socials: Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, Slack, Instagram, Threads,
Slack?
TikTok. I don't know. At High Tech Podcast or High Tech Pod. I don't know. Maybe we're there. It's an opportunity.
Will, I would like to see your chain of thought of how you got to this answer.
There is none. There is none. Just me rattling off social media tools. Follow us on all the things, like, reshare, do that. It helps us. It helps all small content creators, hobbyists, etc. You know, Ninja, Mr. Beast, they don't need your likes. They have plenty of money. Like our stuff. Reshare our stuff.
What a move to call out Ninja and
right?
Mr. Beast.
Gosh, Ninja. No,
Chris, make sure to highlight this on our socials. We're going to
Ninja,
war.
Okay? No. Turn around. I do not have a tank big enough. I do not have a virtual tank big enough to take on Ninja or Mr. Beast.
We're hitting it. It's gonna be great.
If Ninja or Mr. Beast ever hears this and wants to talk to us, reach out to us at inbox@hightechpod.us, where you can subscribe, support, follow, challenge us. Do you not agree with us today? Then we want to know.
We want to know. You know. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Yeah, the guy who has his own candy bar company now really wants to talk to the High Tech Podcast.
Maybe he does.
Maybe he does.
If he does, he should go over to hightechpod.us and check out all of our episodes, all of our socials. They're all there. Follow us. Our affiliate links for Notion and Reflection app are also there. If you're interested in those tools, check them out through our affiliate links. That's great for us, great for you, and all the good things. Okay, that's a wrap on another week of the High Tech Podcast, episode 196. Thank you for joining us as we empower minds.
Embrace tech.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Buckle up.